Greetings, everyone, and welcome to True Crime Inspector. Prepare to be drawn into a tale that's far from ordinary. In a world where addiction can often be an adversary that's conquered, Nicole Pietz, a young woman with a promising future, initially found herself on the path to recovery. She was a beacon of hope, someone who appeared to have it all ahead of her. However, what unfolds today is a case that required over 6 years of relentless investigation. It took an additional year to ensure that the prime suspect faced his due justice and was locked away for as long as possible. At first glance, this crime appeared meticulously orchestrated, with the perpetrator basking in years of perceived immunity, convinced he'd never be held accountable. But it's the minutiae, the fragments of evidence painstakingly gathered over time, that ultimately completed the puzzle. Now let's delve into this intricate narrative right from the beginning. Who was Nicole Pietz? Born on February 26, 1973 in King County, Washington, Nicole was the only child of parents whose marriage unraveled while she was still in high school. Nicole had a vibrant childhood, marked by her active and outgoing nature. She was deeply involved in sports and had a natural charm that attracted many friends. She cherished trips to the countryside, with Lake Sammamish, situated east of Seattle, being her favorite summer vacation spot. After completing high school, Nicole pursued her education at Western Washington College, focusing on public relations. Throughout her academic journey, Nicole maintained her passion for sports, maintaining excellent physical fitness. She decided to transform her love for athletics into a source of income by working as a trainer at a local sports club. Her dedication and skill quickly earned her the respect of her peers, and she built a loyal client base who eagerly attended her group classes. Simultaneously, Nicole embarked on a journey to attain higher education in the field of management. After completing her studies, she secured a position at a prominent mobile communications company. On the surface, Nicole exuded friendliness, sociability, and a willingness to assist others at any given moment. However, very few people were aware of the immense pain and suffering concealed beneath her facade of apparent well-being, as well as a troubling addiction. During her teenage years, Nicole faced a significant crisis triggered by her parents' divorce. For her fragile and still developing psyche, this event constituted a profound shock. Her rebellious tendencies and association with a less-than-ideal crowd led Nicole to cope with her problems by turning to alcohol as a means of escape. Nicole's struggles with addiction persisted for several years, taking a toll on both her physical and mental well-being. During this period, Nicole's mother, Gail, worked as a flight attendant and was frequently away from home due to her demanding work schedule. Consequently, she failed to notice the troubling changes occurring in her only daughter. Nicole resided with her elderly grandmother, who also took some time to recognize the extent of her granddaughter's alcohol consumption. By the time the truth came to light, the ravages of alcohol addiction had already inflicted irreparable damage. Gail, who had always shared a close bond with her daughter despite the challenges they faced, stepped in to help Nicole. She not only arranged for her daughter to receive therapy, but also joined her in attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, providing crucial support to Nicole in confronting her addiction. During this period, Gail had remarried, and her boyfriend, Rod, was understanding and compassionate. He wholeheartedly supported his stepdaughter and cared for her as if she were his own child. Rod held steadfast in his belief that Nicole could overcome her addiction. Nicole, in turn, approached her therapy with dedication, never missing a single session, and made rapid progress in her journey toward recovery. Unfortunately, the toll of alcohol abuse had a profound impact on Nicole's health. She developed severe complications with her pancreas, which necessitated surgery. However, one of the most devastating consequences of her alcohol abuse at such a young age was the impairment of her reproductive functions, rendering Nicole unable to have children. In the mid-1990s, after successfully overcoming her addiction and embracing a sober lifestyle, Nicole crossed paths with her future spouse, named David. She had just started working at a sports club, and David was a regular visitor. David, a tall and handsome young man who prioritized his physical fitness, was immediately drawn to Nicole. Likewise, he caught her eye, and they soon began to show interest in each other. Despite a 4-year age difference, they were undeterred and commenced a romantic relationship. Their love continued to flourish, lasting nearly 8 years before the couple decided to marry in 2002. They organized a beautiful yet intimate wedding ceremony in Hawaii, attended exclusively by their closest loved ones. Following their wedding, the newlyweds settled in the tranquil town of Linwood, located in Washington state. They purchased their own home and gradually established their life together. Nicole, known for her sociable and friendly nature, swiftly made friends and fostered strong relationships with their neighbors. Her deep affection for animals was evident as she cared for several dogs. Unable to have children, Nicole redirected her maternal love and attention toward her cherished pets. According to their neighbors' recollections, David and Nicole appeared to be the epitome of a perfect married couple. They were nearly inseparable, often seen walking their dogs together and radiating happiness. Nicole had a talent for cooking, and she took great pleasure in it. She delighted her spouse with delicious homemade meals and enjoyed surprising their house guests with her culinary expertise. In 2006, just a few days before her 33rd birthday, Nicole inexplicably vanished. On that day, she failed to attend the meeting of the AA Society, where she held a leadership role and served as an inspiration to the group. This absence was unprecedented, leading fellow members to speculate whether she had relapsed after nearly 9 years of sobriety. Nicole also did not show up for work, raising concerns among her co-workers. In the evening, Gail, her mother, grew increasingly worried as she was unable to reach her daughter throughout the day, an occurrence that had never transpired before. She reached out to David to inquire about Nicole's whereabouts, but her son-in-law mentioned they had a disagreement the previous day. Assuming Nicole might still be upset with him, David did not immediately initiate a search for her, but intended to ask for forgiveness later in the day. However, when Nicole failed to return home that evening and her phone remained unanswered, the family decided to contact the police. Regrettably, their initial report was not immediately accepted by the authorities. The initial response from the police was that Nicole was an adult, and not even a full day had passed since her disappearance, leading them to conclude there was no immediate cause for concern. Consequently, the search did not commence until the evening of the second day, as Nicole had still not reappeared and her phone remained unresponsive. The police decided to initiate the search, starting from the last place Nicole had been seen, her and David's home. Upon investigating the residence, no clues or signs of any unusual activity were discovered that could suggest Nicole had been kidnapped or harmed within the house. Additionally, Nicole had gone missing along with her personal vehicle, indicating the possibility that she had simply chosen to leave and decided not to return. This gave rise to the first theory, that after a marital dispute with her husband, she had opted to leave or teach him a lesson, causing him to worry. The second theory was voiced by Nicole's friends from her support group for individuals struggling with alcohol addiction. They speculated that Nicole might have experienced a relapse after years of abstinence and sobriety. Supporting this hypothesis was the fact that she had been prescribed strong painkillers due to a back injury, and she had been taking them in excess of the prescribed dosage. It was possible that at some point she switched from medication to alcohol. The third and most distressing theory was that Nicole had not returned or provided any communication because she was no longer alive. The family of the missing person, refusing to give in to despair, held on to hope and took proactive measures. Nicole's mother and stepfather didn't wait for the police to act within their set timeline and initiated the search themselves. They reached out to the public through social media, appealing for assistance and urging people to share any relevant information regarding their daughter's whereabouts. When they arrived in Linwood, they began actively searching for Nicole, putting up flyers featuring her photographs and reaching out to individuals who knew her personally. Simultaneously, the police conducted searches not only for Nicole, but also for her car, attempting to retrace the route it had taken on the day she vanished. However, as the search continued, the prospect of finding Nicole alive grew increasingly dim. Tragically, a few days later, the worst fears were realized. In one of the local park areas, a man on his morning jog made a grim discovery. Instead of his usual route, he had chosen to take a shortcut through an obscure and neglected area. There, he noticed something unusual amidst the shrubbery. As he drew closer, he realized that it was the badly mutilated, unclothed body of a young woman. The news of this horrific find was immediately reported to the police. Upon arriving at the scene, forensic experts suspected violence had played a role in the crime due to the victim's lack of clothing. There was no doubt that it was a murder, evident from the numerous bruises, abrasions, and contusions on the victim's body. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. Nicole had been strangled with bare hands. It was a gruesome and horrifying scene. Considering that the victim's car had not yet been located, investigators surmised that the primary motive for the crime might have been theft. However, the assailant had decided to eliminate a witness, and given that the victim was a young woman, there was a possibility of sexual assault. While the police strongly suspected that the body belonged to Nicole Pietz, who had disappeared a few days earlier and was the subject of a citywide search, formal identification was still pending. When Gail was confronted with her daughter's lifeless body at the morgue, the emotional shock proved overwhelming, causing her to lose consciousness. Nicole's mother required immediate medical attention, given the distressing circumstances. Her husband, Rod, also displayed signs of grief, but many found David's reaction to the loss somewhat unusual. David did not appear to be genuinely in a state of depression, and his emotions came across as somewhat forced. However, at the time, people didn't dwell on it too much, understanding that individuals cope with tragedy in their own unique ways. While the search for the missing vehicle was ongoing, the police continued to believe that the car was the primary target of the assailant, and they needed to focus on finding clues inside the vehicle. Information about the missing car was disseminated through the media, urging anyone who spotted it to immediately report it to the designated hotline. Several weeks later, the car was finally located in one of the city's peripheral parking lots. An alert security guard noticed the unassuming gray Volkswagen Polo, which had been parked there for an extended period. Unaware of its involvement in a murder case, the guard reported the discovery. The police promptly impounded the car for a thorough examination and forensic analysis. Investigators had hoped to find crucial evidence and vital clues inside the car that would aid in identifying the perpetrator and reconstructing the sequence of events. However, their efforts were met with disappointment. The vehicle yielded no tangible evidence. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, and no indications that the car's owner had been forcibly taken from it. The only fingerprints and DNA traces found within the cabin belonged to Nicole herself and her husband, who occasionally used the vehicle. Despite this, the investigators hesitated to return the car to David, as they believed that crucial evidence might be concealed beneath the surface. The only indisputable fact in the case was the brutal and merciless manner in which the young woman had been killed. However, the motive behind the crime remained shrouded in mystery. The theory of car theft now appeared implausible, as the vehicle had been abandoned on the other side of the city almost immediately, and there were no signs of a struggle inside it. The second potential motive, sexual violence, was not substantiated. Forensic experts determined that the victim had not engaged in any sexual activity, consensual or forced, at least a day before the crime. Nevertheless, the question lingered regarding why she had been found without any clothes. The third theory suggested a personal motive or intense negative emotions on the part of the perpetrator toward the victim. This was supported by the numerous injuries that appeared to have been inflicted in a fit of rage. However, Nicole, known for her kindness and sociability, had no known enemies or adversaries. This perplexing case seemed destined to remain unsolved, as nearly a year had passed without any new leads or investigative directions. No one had witnessed the crime, and the identity of the individual who abandoned the car in the parking lot remained unknown. The location itself was sparsely populated, and there were no surveillance cameras in the vicinity. What added to the mystery was the fact that the person who had driven the car was significantly taller and larger than the victim, as evidenced by the position of the driver's seat. Suspicion also arose from the case being designated as confidential, with no information about the progress of the investigation or any new facts and evidence being disclosed even to the victim's relatives. Consequently, Nicole's mother, stepfather, and husband were essentially kept in the dark regarding the case. The family received only sporadic updates, such as the use of Nicole's bank card at a specific gas station in the country following her disappearance. The police requested surveillance footage from the gas station's cameras, but the contents of those recordings remained undisclosed. Frustrated by the lack of progress and the continued elusiveness of their daughter's killer, Nicole's parents decided to take matters into their own hands and launch an independent investigation. They hired a private detective to compile information and validate some of their theories. Additionally, they offered a reward of $10,000 for any valuable information related to the case. This reward was later increased to $35,000, but despite their efforts, the case remained at a standstill. David, Nicole's husband, initially displayed interest in the investigation for the first 6 months. However, over time, he gradually distanced himself, ceased communication with his mother-in-law and father-in-law, and eventually remarried, starting a new family. This news was particularly devastating for Gail, as her daughter's inability to have children had been a source of ongoing tension in their marriage. Gail had suggested on multiple occasions that her son-in-law could be the perpetrator, but many viewed these suspicions as stemming from resentment. The police, for their part, did not seem to entertain such animosity as a credible motive. However, an unexpected twist in the case occurred 6 years after the crime when David was taken into custody as the primary suspect. While this development surprised most observers of the investigation, it came as no shock to Nicole's family and friends, who had harbored suspicions about him from the beginning and had openly discussed their concerns. After years of feeling disappointed by the slow progress of justice, they now saw it finally served. David believed he had committed the perfect crime and wouldn't be pursued. However, the crime had several unusual aspects that needed investigation. One was the surveillance footage at the gas station where someone used Nicole's card. The video showed a man who resembled David, although his identity couldn't be confirmed due to headwear and dark glasses. Although this recording wasn't conclusive evidence, it was added to the case file. Another oddity was the absence of Nicole's wedding ring, an item she always wore. This raised more questions for investigators. Initially, the assumption was that the jewelry had been stolen by a criminal. However, during a search of the victim's house, the wedding ring was discovered in a box on the dressing table. Furthermore, forensic experts found a special dental mouthguard in Nicole's mouth during the examination of her body. She had been prescribed this device shortly before the tragedy to address issues related to bruxism, or teeth grinding, caused by nervousness. This condition had led to muscle spasms in her jaw, resulting in enamel erosion and tooth chipping. This discovery led investigators to believe that the victim had been killed in her own bed while she was still asleep. This explained her lack of clothing, the pristine state of her body with no signs of resistance, and the absence of makeup on her face, which she typically applied before leaving the house. Regarding the mouthguard, it's worth noting that David may have simply forgotten about it, as Nicole had started using it recently. Furthermore, experts thoroughly examined and assessed the position of the driver's seat in the discovered car. They found that the anthropometric measurements of the last person who sat behind the wheel matched those of the victim's spouse, David. Additionally, only David and Nicole's fingerprints were found in the car. If a third person had been in the vehicle, their traces would have been discovered. If they had attempted to erase their presence, It would have likely resulted in the removal of both fingerprints and other evidence from the car. Another crucial discovery was made thanks to advancements in technology. After committing the crime, the perpetrator used the victim's phone multiple times in different parts of the city. Interestingly, at the same locations and times, there was also a signal from David's phone. As it turned out, David had a motive for the crime. In this seemingly perfect family, a significant crisis had long been brewing. While Nicole was working hard, juggling 2 jobs and helping individuals battle their addictions, her husband led a carefree life. He couldn't hold down a job for long, preferred to spend his wife's earnings on alcohol and other women, and frequented bars and clubs. Consequently, the family faced severe financial problems that worsened over time. Nicole attempted to persuade her husband to change his ways, give up his partying lifestyle, and attend AA meetings to overcome his addiction. In response, David ridiculed her, labeling her as boring and overly complicated. Additionally, it came to light that David not only routinely cheated on his wife with various random mistresses, but also repeatedly attempted to involve Nicole in these affairs. Nicole consistently rejected his advances, and at one point, David even tried to get her drunk in an attempt to force her into such a situation. Gail, Nicole's mother, was aware of the horrifying circumstances within her daughter's marriage and attempted to convince her to leave her husband. However, Nicole remained devoted to him and hoped that David would change. Following Nicole's mysterious death, her husband hastily pursued a substantial insurance payout and immediately started a new relationship. It was revealed that several months before the tragedy, David, who had been unfaithful in the past, had been involved with a woman named Jane. He spent time with her in bars and clubs while his wife was occupied with work and studies. Notably, shortly before Nicole's birthday, he brought Jane to their home, where they were discovered by Nicole upon her unexpected return. This incident triggered the family dispute. Nicole confided in her mother about the situation as they shared a close relationship. Just a couple of days later, Nicole mysteriously vanished. Gail had suspected her son-in-law's involvement from the very beginning. However, the police insisted that the available evidence was insufficient to apprehend the suspect. Subsequently, the case was classified, and the family ceased to receive any updates about the investigation. Over the years, Nicole's parents lost all hope of seeing the culprit brought to justice. When David received a substantial insurance payout following his wife's death, he used the money to support his relationship with Jane. Gail suspected that David's mistress might have played a role in the crime or acted as an accomplice, but she was only brought in as a witness, as no evidence implicating her in the crime was uncovered during the investigation. David faced trial in September 2013, during which he adamantly denied any involvement in the tragedy. His defense lawyers initially argued that the evidence against their client was circumstantial and insufficient to definitively establish his guilt. As it became evident that there were numerous incriminating factors, the defense shifted tactics in an attempt to portray David as a victim. They brought up the story of Nicole's pain medication use following her back injury and tried to convince the court that Nicole had experienced a breakdown, resumed drinking alcohol, and made her husband's life unbearable. However, these claims lacked merit, and those who knew Nicole contradicted such assertions. Furthermore, even if she had experienced difficulties, it would not have justified David's heinous act. Ultimately, the defendant's guilt was convincingly established, and he received the maximum sentence permitted by the laws of the state where the case was tried. David was sentenced to 18 years in prison. However, he may be eligible for parole in 2025 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Thanks for watching True Crime Inspector. Make sure to comment your thoughts and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any shocking true crime cases. There are many more to come.